Hello, you are listening to Jump and Shoot, a gaming podcast. And today we've got another episode of our Sidequests series, which is a series of live streamed discussion based episodes about the topic of our guests' choosing. These are going to be free form, just basically from the hip discussion based episodes, just more like a just chatting live stream kind of thing. We'll be fielding questions in the chat. This is a contrast to our typical produced episodes, which are a little bit more directed. And today I'm here with Jump and Shoot frequent guest here, Charlie.
Hello.
Hey man, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, it's always good to be here. I think the first podcast I ever recorded was for Jump and Shoot, actually.
Damn, I broke the cherry, bro. Bro, I just broke the shit. I have to get like the toxic bro shit out the way first, so we can talk about Samus in relative harmony
without getting too wild.
But I see you're in Planet Zeebs right now.
So I don't remember the name of the space station, but this is the Federation.
Thing
that they took. That you take the baby Metroid 2 at the end of Metroid 2.
SR 388, the space station. Above it.
That's the planet.
And look at me being all crazy and flighty. We are talking about Metroid today, right, Charlie? Is that what we're talking?
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, hey, you said it was a guest chooser, but you did tweet about it this morning, not knowing what you wanted to do. So
yeah, you really wanted to talk about
it. Would be Metroid. It would be Metroid, though. I mean, if it's not Metroid, it's Katamari, and I don't know. Metroid's more relevant right now.
I would love to talk about Katamari, but I haven't played that game in since it came out. So I would not be very fresh. It would be a stale take on Katamari.
It's like $7.50 on the eShop right now.
No, I have it already. It's in there somewhere. I just haven't played it yet in a while. But yeah, we're talking about Metroid. I am knee deep in a Metroid replay right now. I'm trying to knock out the series before Metroid Dread drops. Metroid is a girl, 6 2/3. Yes, it's been canonically confirmed that it was. Which, funny enough, actually, that was a suggestion that was made mid-development.
I was under the impression that was like a thing that they wanted to do, but yeah, that was like one of those weird things that they just kind of did it.
Yeah, and like that's like both kind of cool and kind of lame at the same time, because it's like, why wasn't that like the default like?
Mm-hmm. Especially since it was based off of Alien. It just feels like, or Aliens. Or
Alien or Aliens, this series franchise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But still haven't seen Aliens.
So yeah, we will be talking about Metroid just kind of nebulously, right? Yeah. Are there any games in the series that you have not played?
So I've played at least one version of every 2D Metroid game.
Hell yeah.
So I've played through Zero Mission, Samus Returns, Super Metroid, and then Fusion, as far as like the core Metroid series. And then I've played Prime 1, most of Prime 2, and started Prime 3 on accident because I thought I beat Prime 2, when in actuality I played the ending of Prime 1 again and just didn't know. I still don't get how I did that, but... and then I think I also played the beginning of Federation Force, which is something that I don't remember. So maybe I just really hated it, or maybe I didn't actually play it. But I do have it.
6 2/3 asks, you never got down with Other M? That should be, I think there's a question mark in there.
I forgot about Other M. Other M was a game that I tried at a friend's house after I played and liked Super Metroid, and I was like, okay, people really hate this one. I don't think it's as bad. Like it can be as bad as people say it is. And from what I remember, I mean, it was a competent game, maybe just not a good Metroid game.
Yeah,
was my like very, very early impressions of it. Like,
honestly, a pretty good read.
Yeah, like it felt like it was like overall like a decent game. Like nothing like atrocious aside from the straying from the source material and kind of treatment of Samus as a character. But like,
Yeah.
knowing what I know about Samus, needing permission to use like missiles or whatever after she's a bounty hunter, so stuff like that is obviously doesn't feel right. But like, if you replaced Samus with like some random grunt from the Federation, I feel like that game could have been an interesting spin-off at the very least. So
Yeah, because it's like they tried to capitalize on that. I guess the story threads that Fusion left with Adam. I think that was sort of like the main driving force behind it, and they just like they wanted to do a backstory game and like add more, I guess, meat to the universe because there's like really, which is a mistake in and of itself, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think it's weird. Like I'm not like I feel like there's for a lot of fan bases like Metroid, there's like two halves. There's like the really into the lore kind of thing, and then there's just the people who like the thing. And
Yes.
and the story, the core story of it, maybe not necessarily like all the things surrounding it. Like I don't know the lore. Like I know a little bit about the manga and like characters' backstories and stuff, but like I haven't read all the like the Prime codex entries and stuff like that. Um, but which is funny because I'm very much the opposite with like, something like Star Wars. But
Yeah, well, it's like Metroid. I feel like just works so well in ambiguity and subtlety that like I feel like maybe that might be like a subconscious choice of yours that like you almost like want to keep it vague or like you don't want to because it's like it's just better that way. And Six says they were still in their big emotional expo dump phase story wise, which is very true. And that's exactly what that's the problem so yeah, let's piggyback this other M topic. So I haven't played that game in a long time since it came out, and I actually don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. I have the same exact qualms with the story and presentation, obviously, as you do, but there's something kind of cool about it, but its novelty wears off so fast. And I played that game during a time I wasn't really playing video games that much, so it was like very off and on. So I would play like I don't know 45 minutes, an hour. I'd be all casual, a filthy, disgusting loser. And I think it worked well for that, And I was also,
I mean, for the Wii audience,
yeah. But it's been a while since I've played it, obviously, and since then I developed a better appreciation for action games in general, and that game is definitely more of an action game than it is like a typical Metroid exploration kind of thing. I mean, there's elements of that, sure. There's like, oh, you hit this door, you don't have a key for it, you have to come back later kind of stuff, but like it's like really superficial in comparison. So I'm curious as to what I'll think about it when I get to it. You should do a replay.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that I want to like jump into. I'm kind of in this point right now where I'm like trying to play through all the Metroid games in somewhat close to release order, just like when I can, when I have the time to. And I played through all the 2D games already. 2D games were my priority. Prime is good. I don't like it as much as the 2D games really, but like I think once I roll credits on 3 or on Prime 3, I'll probably run through and try to do a run of other M. But yeah, no, I'm totally on the same page with you. And I'm kind of in this weird spot where like I play action games, like I play a lot of them and I like enjoy them, but I never get super into them. And I would assume that Other M is one of those games like in that genre that just isn't as deep.
Yeah, and
as others.
Yes, that answers Six's question too about it feeling kind of like DMC in terms of gameplay. It doesn't, but like it's more like oh man, kind of like any other Team Ninja game where you have like your QTE / execution moves, and they kind of like sometimes they feel awesome because like the enemy did this attack that you stopped or like it's cool, but most of the time you're just like, again, how do I skip through this? It's like
Right.
X-rays in Mortal Kombat. After you see like 60 of them, you're like, how the fuck do I just skip this? I don't want to watch this again. So yeah, no, it's like the problem with it and like every other, I feel like every Nintendo game that they outsource to a distinct third party ends up feeling like a weird middle child, like weird love child of two different
Oh,
genres.
interesting. Have you played Mario and Rabbids?
No, I still need
Okay,
to
that
play
game
them.
is fantastic. I think that like that is like honestly like I would put that like top 10 games on the Switch for sure. Like that game is
Ooh.
really good. Like I
Um,
loved it.
yeah, I mean it's weird because that game checks all my boxes. It's like
Hmm.
strange. It's a thing that you don't really expect, and
Hmm.
it's also stimulating to me because it's a Ubisoft game that might actually be good.
Right. Yeah, the whole like the whole thing that makes those games uninteresting is just not there.
Right, yeah, yeah. So I hate Ubisoft a lot, and I'm kind of, I mean, like I try to be objective about it, like in actual critique, but I think
Hmm.
whenever I'm in public, I try to play up how much I hate Ubisoft.
Uh-huh.
It's just kind of, I don't know, maybe that makes me lame as hell, but it's kind of like saying fuck Konami every stream that I do. It's just a thing that I need to insert. So
That's funny.
it
Yeah, no,
it
I mean
pisses me.
I feel like, speaking of games that Nintendo sourced, I think that's changed a lot in the last couple of years, because they've done that with Metroid now.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and that I think it turned out really well, and also incorporating more action gamey elements to it. Like, so have you played any of Samus Returns?
Yeah, I actually forgot to mention my history so people can cross reference if I accidentally lie. But I played every Metroid except I played every Metroid to completion, and that actually includes pinball
Oh, nice.
and
Is
hunters.
that
But
good?
it's a pinball game.
Oh, so yeah, so it's
It's
fun.
fine. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Sonic Spinball. I'm sure that's a trite comparison, but there is a little bit of that. So I haven't finished. I haven't even played Federation Force, and I haven't finished Samus Returns. When Samus Returns first came out, I played about an hour. I killed like three
Okay.
Metroids, and that's as far as I got.
So, but you got the counter.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So to me, like the counter solved a lot of the problems that I think Metroid can have. Where there are moments, and I like this because it makes the breakthroughs all the more satisfying. But there are moments in those games where you get lost. You're like looking for the thing if you don't remember what you're supposed to do. You're looking for a door, a power up, a secret area, and um, just doing the same thing over and over again can get really old. So adding new elements to kind of spice things up, to add more action, to add more like moment to moment things that aren't just autopiloting can go a long way. And I think that the melee counter like really, really helps with that.
Yeah, so, and six is 100% right. I was giggling at this. Pinball is a pat on the head for Metroid fans and a spit in the eye for pinball, which is very true. Also, that game, is insanely expensive. It's like over $100 now. And it's
Is it
one of
on
the,
Wii? Is it on Virtual Console?
yeah, it's on Virtual Console.
Oh, okay.
But like, that's one of the few games I sold. Like, I sold a bunch of
Oh,
DS games,
oh.
all my PSP stuff, and a bunch of PS3, PS2 stuff, and that was in that chunk of stuff, including
Mhm.
Metroid Prime Hunters, which was a mistake because that game's like a little fun for what it is, but it's been so long since I played it. But yeah, sorry, retreading to the counter. So the counter was cool if I remember correctly because it adds this kind of thing that Metroid I feel like needed, like a sort of different kind of kineticism. Like it almost feels like there should be a different button, and I feel like that's a
Mhm.
good button, right? Like to
Interesting.
just
Yeah.
have it. Um, and but and again, this is secondhand criticism, so don't. So 'cause you finished Samus Returns, right?
Yes. Yeah. The
So does
first
it
Metroid
get?
game I finished.
Oh wow. Does
Yeah.
it get tiring? Does the counter get tiring as the game progresses?
Well, the way that they play it, or play with it usually ends up being, um, kind of it scales the same way, like I guess action games kind of work, where all throughout the game you'll keep running into enemies that you recognize that might be a little harder, but really where the things in like Bayonetta's dodge, for example, get tested are when you start encountering harder enemies, bosses, that kind of thing, and that's when the melee counter starts getting tested. There are shorter timings, faster attacks that you have to use it with. So I think it's definitely like, it's not ideal and it's not perfect, but I do think it's like a very, very good place to kind of start with a new mechanic like that.
Interesting. And that's sort of what I was hoping for with it, or what I was expecting rather. I am. This is almost a premature podcast. I'm a premature podcaster, folks. I'm just gonna say that now. There's my pee-pee joke too. I'm like, so I finished Metroid 1 NES. I finished Zero Mission. I finished another Metroid 2 remake, and I'm like 70% through the Game Boy version of Metroid 2. So I'll probably start Samus Returns tomorrow. And hopefully just like no life it, because I don't really have anything going on tomorrow. So I'll probably just try to knock it out in a day.
I honestly don't know if you'll be able to beat it in a day, because they add a lot to that game.
Dude, you vastly underestimate my ability to Dorito crumbs that 3DS.
Oh boy. Didn't you break a 3DS recently?
No, good memory though. But you're really close. My circle pad fell off.
Oh, right. That's what it was.
And so I had to use my girlfriend's 3DS, and then I actually bought a new one.
Okay.
So, dude, it's funny, Six, because I don't like Doritos at all. Like, I don't like shitty chip snacks. I only like, and I said this during my FF4 stream, but I only bought these, which is just a tub of pretzel rods. Because all the white kids, all the rich white kids I went to school with had those kind of snacks, and I had like Aldi potato chips. So it was my way of flexing. Sorry, you're gonna ask me a question.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, have you ever heard of popcorners?
No. Should I Google this?
Yes, you should Google that.
Popcorners?
Yeah, if you like popcorn, you should definitely give them a shot. That's what I'll say.
Oh, okay. So they're like rice chips with
They're corn chips.
Okay.
Popcorn chips. So it's like chips made out of popcorn.
I see.
But they're really good.
I see. Okay, I'll try it. So like stuff like that, I like that in you got Six's endorsement.
Yeah, Six knows what's up.
I feel like Six is the third, is like a phantom third, because if you look in the latest follower thing, he was the latest follower. He's the most active.
There he is.
This is for you, buddy. This is for you. So yeah, Samus Returns. So let me give you a few impressions that I had of that game when I first tried it. And the only reason why I stopped playing it, I think I moved. I had just moved, and I was just trying to juggle a bunch of stuff, and I didn't stop playing it because I didn't like it. It was just I got ADD'd, basically.
Yeah.
So added. I'll give you some first impressions. Tell me if they're accurate. So, I thought the presentation was way too bright and lively, and I only remembered this because when I was playing another Metroid 2 remake, or AM2R, as it's colloquially referred to as, I noticed like how dark and atmospheric that game was, and it triggered this memory of like, I remember this game. I remember this looking like Star Fox Adventures almost. So there was that. I didn't get super. So the level design in Metroid 2 is really interesting, because it's like incredibly linear. It's Final Fantasy X. It's incredibly linear and only opens up just slightly because you follow the path and you have to kill the Metroids. And when you kill a certain number of Metroids, it lowers the lava level, and then you go to the next part. But it doesn't really give you freedom until the end. So, I noticed that in the little I played of Samus Returns, that the linearity really felt like it felt like a little bit railroady to me.
Mhm.
And maybe it does open up. I don't know. Um,
I think okay, so right off the bat, I think yeah, it sounds more like Final Fantasy
would
13.
I ignored that because
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is going to be the only stream where I don't talk about that game. I made it, and I already did. So 6-1. Fuck.
Based on what I know, yeah, honestly. But no, I think the way that it works is basically like there are more Metroids to kill, and that's kind of how they open it up, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
like there are kind of moments where certain like bosses are gated, or certain moments of progression are gated by just normal Metroids or like lower level Metroids that you need to kill.
Right.
And
Okay.
I don't think it necessarily fixes the linearity problem, but it definitely like addresses it. Like there's definitely like an attempt that's made to kind of fix some of these problems, and I
Hmm.
like it. Like I think um, I played a lot of that game with headphones on too in the dark,
Okay.
which I think really helped kind of get that atmosphere across. But I definitely do know what you're saying with the brightness.
Yeah.
But I think
Kid
it's
Icarus Uprising is.
oh
That's it.
wait,
Kind of.
what about that game?
It kind of just looks like that. The
Oh yeah,
brightness. And
I
what's
love
up,
that game.
Ishu? Hey,
I got
man.
so excited.
Uh,
But yeah, no, I think it it definitely gets darker. Firstly, but also secondly, like knowing what I know about like the story that it's trying to tell, I think it's also like you exploring this like kind of beautiful ruined planet, and so like to me, it's kind of like definitely not the same scariness that the Game Boy game had, but it's also not necessarily not successful in its storytelling to me. But also, I
okay.
haven't played it in like 3 years, so
Yeah. So the Game Boy version of that game is interesting, and I beat that as a kid. I remember. And Six is pretty right on point when he says it's rail shooter ish because the game
mm,
just leads you through these things, and like all the enemies are pretty simple. They're very
mhm,
like there's not a lot of pattern to them.
yeah,
It just kind of like you're blasting stuff.
right.
A lot of, and I think the Game
Which
Boy version
I'm
has. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna argue that that's the case for a lot of Metroid
Mm-hmm.
outside of the bosses.
Yeah.
I obviously like hardware limitations and memory limitations are part of that, but I think that that's uh, definitely something that I would say about most of the 2D Metroids.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, fusion also got mentioned in the chat, and it's like because fusion is suffocating and claustrophobic, but I
Hmm.
think that fusion uses that as an atmospheric device for
Yeah,
better
no,
or worse.
I love that I love Fusion like it's tension and claustrophobia and just dread, like no pun intended. Like I think Fusion's like
He said the
really
thing.
really it's really good at what it sets out to do.
Sick. Yeah.
Eh,
That's interesting. So like the Game Boy version has been really interesting to me in this
mhm.
replay because like as a kid I have a lot of memories of just kind of running around aimlessly doing nothing, and as an adult I have a very recent memory of an hour ago playing that game and running around and doing nothing. Um but I feel like the game does use its sparsity to
Mhm.
its own atmospheric intent. Like
Yeah.
uh kind of in the same way that Fusion uses its suffocating claustrophobia, I feel like this game is like there's so many big open areas that then
Mhm.
close.
Yeah.
And even in Metroid 1, that wasn't really as big of a thing.
Mhm.
Even in Super Metroid, that's barely a thing. There's a couple zones where you're like, there's a big room, and then there's like, it gets a little overwhelming. But compared to like, dude, like Metroid, when I think about Prime, I think Prime took the most from Metroid 2, to be honest
Mm,
with you.
interesting.
It took the progression of Super Metroid, but in terms of like just overall feel and design, I think that Prime was one specifically really took that. And it's like there's something interesting about like having a big ass room and then small little corridors in this like extremely limited system. Because the Game Boy was like, I mean, this was like 91, so it was like still pretty early in the Game Boy's life cycle, like phase 2 of 5, right? But like that game actually looks good, and I think in my memory I have a lot of like it looked a lot more squashed and ugly to me, but replaying it, I think it actually looks really good. Like the sprite scale is actually like I've mentioned it being bigger. And I'll compare this to Castlevania The Adventure, which came out not terribly distant to Metroid 2, or even the second Game Boy game in the Castlevania series, Belmont's Revenge. The sprite scaling is way different. Or Mega Man, the five Mega Man games. It's like, you only have like a little bit of room. But like in Metroid 2, there's actually like space. No pun intended, but like there's room, and like the visuals are pretty good for what it is. Like the sound effects are good, but it just gets grating as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's my impression. Is like, I mean, I've like gone back and listened to like the soundtrack and stuff, or like looked at like the title screen, looked at like some like very small amounts of footage of that game, and everything is. I mean, obviously, it's the Game Boy. And it's definitely supposed to be like unsettling because it looks unsettling too. But yeah, that sound design, I can't imagine is something that I would enjoy hearing for more than a couple minutes at a time.
Man, you know what? Yes and no, because like it really does. So like the little music that's in the game is actually like really clean for that Game Boy sound chip. Like the main melody of the game is very like prominent and crisp, and then
nice. Okay.
there's a lot of like, dude, it's kind of the most like doom metal Metroid soundtrack because there's parts where it's it's supposed to be scary or foreboding, and it's like a couple notes just droning, so like or just like over and over, just like dun, 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 dun. And yeah, it gets on your nerves if you spend too much time with it. But I think an interesting thing about that game is like the form versus function of it, right? How much of that was actually the Game Boy's limitation, and maybe they did use the limitation to that effect. And I'm getting this granular about Metroid 2's design because of my initial observations of Samus Returns. Samus Returns has had none of that. It was too bright, too like just exploring an alien world with the Metroids. Samus and the Metroid.
It's some genocide.
No,
I just
be my space friends, just hanging out.
6 2/3 in the chat says it's sacrilege, but Zero Mission is better than Metroid 1. What do you feel about that, Joey?
Oh man, so
because I agree.
I both disagree and agree. So in terms of like greater impact, obviously Metroid 1 wins.
Right.
In terms of like setting new standards and like having like ambition and creative drive, definitely Metroid 1.
Because I mean that left turn even is just so big, but
yes.
Zero Mission is like the greatest remake of all time, probably.
Ooh.
Or arguably. I would say it's up there.
It's pretty good. Yeah, because I like I said, I literally just finished it yesterday. Or wait, did I? Yeah, I finished it yesterday. Man, would I rather play Zero Mission? Yes. But when I replayed the NES version, I felt I got a lot of the same feelings that I felt when I was a kid, because that was within the first 10 games I ever played, and it scared the shit out of me as a kid. And right. And I kind of got that feeling again when I was playing it, that like, holy shit, this is open and scary, and you don't know where you're going.
Which is shocking.
Yeah. And but the thing is that when I played it, oh, I think you froze, Charlie. Charlie froze, or maybe I froze. Is he frozen on anyone else's screen? Yeah. All right. Let me send him a message. Make sure he's
Okay,
okay.
I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, dude,
I don't know what the fuck just happened.
You're like, you said, dude, shock, and your face was frozen with shock, and I thought you were just holding it for dramatic effect.
Oh my God.
And
that would be hilarious.
Holy ice beamed.
Man, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're okay. But okay. So when I replayed Metroid 1, I basically speed ran it, so I didn't get a chance to really deal with all the bullshit that game has, like getting lost and I mean, I got a little lost, but it basically followed like a bullet point of like, you should probably go here in this part of the game, or you should go there, and that made the game a lot. Like I'm a little bit more biased positively because of that, because I've already suffered through it.
Well, I think there's a lot of like, I mean, even for an NES game, a lot of like really smart choices made in that game to accommodate the structure of it. Like, I mean, when you die, you come back with all of your powers, even the password system. That kind of stuff is like, it's not perfect by any means. But there are very few ways it could have been done better with the limitations of the time.
And compared to its contemporaries, I think it was like, compare that to dying in Castlevania 2, which the Metroidvanias, but dying in Castlevania 2 is so much more like debilitating than that. Like, And again, I wonder how much of that was form versus function. I wonder if they like kind of designed a lot of the areas and then like had a kind of sandbox design, and then like we're like, okay, we're not actually going to lead the player in a typical sense through this game. We're just going to kind of like leave this open, which is like, how much of it was intentional, basically? How much of its design was intentional?
Right. I was just gonna say, like, I think that's like one of that game's biggest strengths is how innovative it was and how like just smart it was in every way. I mean, having gone back and played what little I have of that and the original Zelda, like I can confidently say any day out of the week, and this is largely true for any Metroid and Zelda game, but especially these, that I would rather play Metroid any day of the week. It's just, it feels more justified in being cryptic and mysterious. And I think it sells it really well. And again, I've only played like the first couple minutes of that game. Like or a couple minutes sounds short. I've played a decent amount of it, but never gotten super far, just because it's always been like, oh, I'll sit down because I have like 2 hours in the car or something and play the beginning of it over and over again and bash my head against it just to get a feel for the world and the map.
Yeah, I mean, man, both of those games, like, it's such a good comparison, Metroid 1 to the first Zelda, for sure. They definitely did similar things in their own vein. And this is a really silly question. Is the Bikini Samus ending just a reflection of mid-80s Caddyshack culture, or dude programmers doing dude program things? I would say a little bit of both. Because do I think that Bikini Samus is fan service? Like, it's kind of a hard thing to talk about because it's like so unbelievably small of a thing, right? But I think it was definitely like intentional to be like a little sexy, but also how are they going to really, like, I get the logic behind how are we going to really show it's a woman in an NES sprite. So probably a little bit of both. I'm going more toward dude programmer things.
I mean, also, like, you look at a lot of other, like, Japanese media at the time that Metroid would get compared to a lot of, like, sci-fi anime and stuff. There's a lot of, like, women in like tight clothing and bikinis and stuff like that, piloting mechs or
Yeah,
in
exactly.
big spacesuits or stuff. So I mean, from just like a cultural media literacy standpoint, it kind of makes sense too.
It does.
Although
Yeah.
I do think it is mostly dude bro culture, Caddyshack culture, and dude programmers being dude programmers. But I think that there's also probably something to be said about that.
For sure. Yeah, because like stuff like Macross or even Gundam had a little bit of
Mhm.
that, like sexy underwear time. I mean, it makes sense in a way because, like, I mean, like, I guess it's never really like canonically shown how the suit works, but like, it's the same general principle. Also, it's the
Yeah.
future, so
Oh, actually, canonically, oh god, I can't believe I just said actually
yeah, actually,
canonically.
and in
Uh,
the same.
but yeah,
I've
no,
done it before. It hurts.
there. I think there is a scene. It might be in Brawl. It might be in the Subspace Emissary. But as long as she has like the suit, she's able to take it on and off, basically just like by phasing it
But
out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In
which is
Zero
super weird.
Mission, remember when you there's a section of Zero Mission where you don't have the suit.
Which is so cool.
Yeah, it's cool, but I hate stealth, so I'm
Yeah,
indifferent about it. However, now that I've replayed it, you don't actually have to
no, you
to
don't. You can
stealth.
just run.
Right? Yeah, you just run through it. But like there's the part where she gets like an upgraded version of the suit, and it just like it's like it phases in and out. Basically, it's like she doesn't
Prime
put it
3.
on. And Prime 3,
Hmm.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, Zero Mission, man, I really enjoyed what I played of it. Ishu, actually, you were there when I first started that playthrough. I like hadn't played it since it came out, and I was I just impromptu streamed it, and I got, I don't know, maybe 30-40% of the way through the game. Well, not terribly far. But I was like kind of like he was like kind of guiding me in the mechanics, like, oh yeah, this is how you shine spark, because I for some reason didn't remember that.
Hmm.
And like the game, I think the first like 70% of the game is like incredibly polished and super pristine, and then around the time that you get to Ridley, it kind of just like it feels like a little bit. I don't want to. I hate using the word rushed because it's always used out of context, but it does feel a little bit more rushed, maybe a little bit less polished, a less. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do before you go to Torian and kill Mother Brain, and then also there's a lot of stuff you can do post section that I mentioned before. But at the same time, I don't know, it just feels like that there's just so much more thought put into like how to refine and redo the first, let's say, 80% of the base game. If that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
I definitely agree with you. I think that's the problem with like a lot of like the end of Metroidvanias in general, where they can tend to be kind of second to last boss, really short, really hard area, final boss, escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Zero Mission definitely falls into that trap too. Now, as someone who for Super Metroid at least, I played that on an emulator. I played it on NES Online or Super Nintendo Classic or whatever emulator, or the Wii U. Something. I played it on all three of those actually, but
Mm-hmm.
the being able to like play those with save states as an option kind of fixes some of those issues, I think, in a really weird way, because generally, like, I think save states are fine for like obtuse bullshit in older games,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like increasingly less necessary
This game's went on.
as games go on. And I think Zero Mission is one of those games that's like definitely aged pretty well, I would say.
Yeah,
I didn't really feel the need to use them,
I
but
didn't have to use them at all. I did actually have a moment where save states elevated my gameplay experience when I streamed it. Because when I
okay,
streamed it, I was doing it on Wii U, and I think Ishu he was there. What I did was I made a save state before I tried to attempt something that I was definitely not supposed to be able to do yet. Like there's one there's an energy tank and a missile tank that are like in lava.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I wonder if I could run and grab it and then run out. And so I made a save state and I tried a couple times to try to do that. And I was actually able to do it, but I had to know the path first, right, to it. And you're definitely not supposed to be able to do that until you get the gravity suit endgame. So that was like, there's like an interesting way to get through the water, and you can wall jump on it. It was really cool.
How do you feel about the power fantasy moment that happens at the very, very end of Zero Mission?
Ooh, like when you have everything and you're just like
when you have everything and you're in the space pirate ship.
Oh, I actually love that. I think it feels really good because the game still checks you, right? It still throws so the game goes from throwing combat at you that's difficult to throwing platforming stuff that's really hard. There's an energy. I tweeted about this. There's an energy twank. They did energy twank. There's an energy tank right before you fight the final boss, like the post-game final boss.
Yeah,
the true final boss, and it's like the most frustrating, awful energy tank to ever get. Like one of the worst ones in Metroid. And then there's like a lot of really wacky, goofy spine shark. Just name it Spine Shank. I'm thinking of Spine Shank. Shine Spark jumps and stuff that are just like kind of galaxy brain, right? So that's like, I feel like how the game sort of challenges you, but like that jaggedness is kind of indicative of the quality. Yes, I did do 100%. It's indicative of the quality that I was talking about before, where it sort of drops off. And so like I feel like a lot of that stuff was like, oh, we'll just make this really hard, but then the reward is a missile tank when you definitely don't need it.
Yeah, it's weird because I think the setting and condition that I played those games in was I was like it must have been winter break, and I was like back in my parents' house for a couple weeks, and I brought my Wii U with me, and I was just playing it in bed, and so I think I probably rushed those more than I probably should or would have in other situations, and so to me, like that idea of like rushed pacing feels like I don't remember, like I don't remember much.
Yeah, I didn't
I don't
either.
remember as much.
I didn't either until yesterday. That was when I kind of noticed it, because as a kid I thought the whole thing was, or I wasn't a kid technically. They came out I was 17, which is weird to think about. And maybe 16, I don't know. But either way, I was around that age when I played, so I remember just being kind of riveted the whole time. And so I think that's still. I think the wacky power-ups, because I think this is a really interesting topic with Metroid, right? Like that especially 2D Metroid, really, because you don't really see it in Prime. I mean, you can sequence break stuff in Prime that's like really 5-head. Like use the morph ball in really interesting ways, and like there's visor swapping that like gets wild, and but like in Critical Path, just base, or not Critical Path, but like in the game, the way the game intends you to get those power ups. There's, I don't know if this is true of Super Metroid, because it's been a really, really long time since I've 100%ed it. But in Zero Mission, I would say there's a deliberate 15%, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, deliberate 15% of power-ups that are purposely designed to be incredibly optional and extremely difficult to get. So they don't really add anything to they don't really necessarily make the game easier. Like you hit
they're
max.
Just there to torture you if you want to go 100%.
Right, exactly. So it gives you like a very like pragmatic, self-imposed challenge, rather than if you get all the missile tanks, then you just face tank the final boss, because you could basically face tank the final boss with like 60-70% of the power-ups that you get, if even that. So I feel like that's like always, because you get that power fantasy no matter what. I think even
Yeah,
if you just like ran through the game and speed ran it, like by the time you get to end game, like I feel like you just have so many abilities that everything just gets
yeah. No,
absolutely wrecked.
I just remember like one shotting and just running through there, one shotting everyone, and then like
Yeah.
occasionally busting out the missiles. But like I don't know. I think I've never been someone who goes for 100% in anything. I don't have any platinum trophies or any. I've never really been like that kind of player, just because like I have, I guess, so much to catch up on is a way I would put
Yeah, I
it.
feel that.
Uh, and so like having played through that game the way that I did, um, yeah, I definitely don't remember ever having like anything where I felt like I was like running out of ammo or health or anything in that last part.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. I mean, I guess like when you're in the zero suit, you can get wrecked pretty
Oh
fast.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But as a whole, yeah, it's pretty. It is what it is. Because I basically ran through a lot of the game without getting power ups, and I just kind of did a cleanup at the end. And I never really. When I was streaming it though, I died to Kraid, and we don't. I don't want to talk about that, but I also have that admission out there in the wild. The final and yeah, the final boss dies very quick without 100%. Funny enough though, the final boss of Zero Mission actually gets new attacks, and I think maybe he either gets more life or gets more aggressive if you have
Hmm,
100%.
interesting. That's cool.
Which I don't know how much of a difference it is. I didn't really test it, but
Hmm.
I'm sure that there's a thing. For me, I when it comes to 100%ing things, I almost never do that without a guide. For the same
Hmm.
reason as you, like it's like I there's just so many things I could be doing in that time.
Right.
I've done it before. I don't need to do it again.
Hmm.
Right. 50% more health. Interesting.
Someone in yeah 6 and 2/3 in the chat actually mentioned Dark Souls, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but talking about 100%ing in games and like adding in things that make it not necessarily mandatory, but reward disproportionately for completion bonuses. That's one of the reasons why like things in like I'm glad the Metroid games don't do that, because like the Souls games have scared me off for so long, because it's not about the difficulty as much as it is the time sink.
Are you talking like just failing at a boss and then having to?
Oh no, the 100% thing. I mean,
Oh, 100. Yeah, yeah. Man, it depends on like what you do for Souls 100% though.
mm,
If you're like platinuming it, I think each game would probably take you about, I don't know, 80 hours the first time you do it.
God.
Yeah, because you have to do multiple playthroughs, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, dude, exactly. Six, like 100% Metroid really just it becomes bombing every single wall. Um, so
Ugh.
it's like that's not really. I don't know. Maybe I'm just rational. I'm trying to like cope with the fact that I'm not a god gamer, but like it just I don't know, man. That doesn't really
Well,
appeal to me.
you know what? Talking about things that you have to look forward to in Samus Returns. Um, Not that I'm saying that you're going to go for the 100%, because I would never promise that to someone else's live stream chat to bully someone else into doing that. But there is an ability where you can see every tile that's breakable
Oh, and yeah, it's
in
like
Samus
the
Returns. Yeah,
Atheon ability. I forgot
yeah,
what it's
yeah.
called.
It's like an upgraded ability of the version of the scan thing from Super Metroid.
Yeah, 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 interesting. But like, it's still you have to activate it. It's still an active skill, right? So it's not
It's an
just
active
like
skill, so it's definitely not fast by any means, but it is definitely quicker.
okay, yeah. But you know what? If it's That's such a funky subject because I feel like developers understand that the internet exists, except Nintendo.
Mhm.
Nintendo may not actually understand this. Like, because this is why I say developers, because Mercury Steam did
Yeah.
Samus Returns, not Nintendo proper, really. So I still think Nintendo doesn't realize that people play games on the internet with each other. So it's a thing.
Federation Force had online multiplayer.
Dude, I know nothing about that game other than it's kind of like Hunters. I'll get to
Yeah.
it. It's the last on my list.
Do you have a new 3DS?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have the game too. It's sitting in there.
Yeah, that's probably what I would recommend playing it on, because I don't know or remember a lot about that game, but I'm pretty sure it's either you play with the nub or you play with motion controls. And on the 3DS, that seems really weird.
Dude, the nub is so small.
The nub is really small.
The nub pad, as I call it, I've never actually had to use it. Hunters.
You didn't play Xenoblade on the 3DS?
No, I only played the Wii version.
Oh,
And
okay.
I did the extra chapter in the remake, and my girlfriend played the full game. It was like I'm spectating and memeing while she's playing, telling her to use backstab when you're behind the enemy.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Backseat gaming.
Yes.
She's flicking me off as we speak. Hunters is a pain to play. Yeah, okay, so I remember I got that game and I thought, like, okay, this is like not long after my like FPS elitist phase that I played this game. And I was like, I'm gonna fucking crack heads at this game. And I remember it pissed me off so badly because it's basically motion controls, because you have to move with the stylus, and I can't see it. Like when I play I don't have my phone in front of me. When I play my DS, it's like up to here on me. There's like that much space. So like to like have to do this, it's really hard for me. It feels like a blind old lady trying to do a scratch off ticket, you know? Just praying to win big.
Do you have that same problem with like Kid Icarus?
Yes.
Okay.
But that game is actually no. It has a difficulty spike toward the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But as a whole, like I have to really be invested in a game to want to do that. It's even worse on a mouse. I got like halfway through the game.
Do you think you'd feel differently if you played it on the Wii Virtual Console? Because I'm pretty sure it's on there.
Yeah. I that's what I bought it on, because I don't own it anymore physically. We'll see. I remember I messaged you about that. I was like, "Hey Charlie, how does this play?"
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So okay, if the game had been designed for like motion controls even or mouse and keyboard, it could have been sick. But like Metroid is not maybe this is just me, maybe I'm being an old man yelling at a cloud, but like to me Metroid is not fucking deathmatch arena multiplayer gameplay. Like to me there should not be another live person in a Metroid game, basically. I'm firmly of that belief. Like maybe somebody who's dying, like, you know, they're wounded, they're moribund, that's fine. But like I don't know. Prime 2's multiplayer. Yeah, so I fucked with that a lot. I tried to get my friends to play that, and it was it was fun. It had a like a Star Fox 64 multiplayer aspect to it.
That's fun.
So yeah, and on a portable system, that's a really good point. I think it just, I don't know, man. When I get to Hunters in my replay, we'll see how I feel about it. But I just can't imagine being like feeling good about it.
Do you want Prime 4 to have a multiplayer?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And especially with Nintendo's netcode.
Okay.
And Nintendo's approach to online. So like a lot of people say, "Oh, what's the harm in it? It's if you're not playing it, what's, you know?" It's like, bro, that eats into development time so hard. Like, and not only that, but it fundamentally changes a lot of the way design choices are made in the development process. For sure. Like every time you think about adding a feature, how can we do this in multiplayer? And then it's an economic thing. It's a logistical thing.
I mean, I do think that with Nintendo games, I think like it's a sliding scale. It's not going to be like Splatoon where the campaign is just to prepare you for the multiplayer necessarily.
Right.
But I think that with the amount of money that Nintendo has and the amount of time that this game has been in development for, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it launches with one, if only because certain parts of the game have just been done for 3 or 4 years at this point.
Yeah. Man, Prime 4 is...
It's an enigma, really. I'm so shocked by everything around that game, I feel like. Every time there's hiring news, even, it's just weird. It's just confusing to me.
It is one of the most cautiously optimistic. My attitude is just so cautiously optimistic, and maybe even cautiously pessimistic, because there's just so much about that game that is full of giant red flags. The fact that we haven't seen even a teaser for it is disheartening and scary. In 4 years. And it's like, that's not a fucking, like, we're trying to keep this story under wraps kind of thing. Because it's not like people are paying millions of dollars for a Metroid Prime 4 story leak, Like, it's not a fucking, like, MCU crossover film or, like, a God of War story or even, like, Uncharted or something. Like, it's not really something that, like, that that's being posited as and how it is in the gaming community. But like, I'm really pessimistic about it, man, because it's like the development got shifted and went back to Retro, who are they even the same developers they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
So that's actually something interesting, because I feel like on the press side, a lot of people make very big deals about very small things at any studio, especially if it's working on a game like Prime 4. And I mean, even now, if you look up Metroid Prime 4 under like news on Google, I'm sure every news story that you see will be about a hire, a job listing, or something like that. And there was actually a recent interview. I think someone at Game Explain did, or Game Explain covered it in some way, at least. That I think it was some YouTuber did an interview with the gameplay director for the Prime trilogy, who was on the project from Metroid Prime all the way through the release of the trilogy on Wii.
I saw this, yeah. And he was talking about like how porting the game would be very difficult.
Oh, not that, but that is also an interesting thing. But
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. But he basically said the impression that I got from it was that a lot of the original team is still there, but some of the biggest names are not necessarily there. Or like maybe, geez, let me see if I can find this. I don't think it was not bad news by any means. It was basically, the impression that I got was, this is like rest assured, a lot of the people here are still people who worked on the games. They're still fans of the original games, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the other side of that I've seen is that they've been hiring a lot of really interesting hires that have me like optimistic for the game. And I don't really have high hopes for the game just because we haven't seen it. But like, I think, they brought on like environmental artists from Halo, for example, which is another sci-fi franchise that has a very good sense of aesthetic and place. And they've brought on like people who've worked on stuff like God of War from like, I think like character design, which I think is another like, interesting choice and interesting hire. But I think for the most part, it's bringing on the names that are new are all names that I think are good. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I just like, man. So Six brings up a good point. He says Nintendo being kind of perfectionist and shifting it around to different teams if they're unsatisfied with quality control and like whatever. The problem is, I would agree, but it's Nintendo quality control, dude. They don't have Nintendo has never really had their finger on the pulse of like what makes people like Metroid. Like, I think Retro did, but Nintendo still foresees these things.
I think Sakamoto understands.
Yeah, but like, I mean, that's why we got Hunters, Pinball, Federation Force. Like, this is why these things have been happening and why there hasn't, and even other M to some extent. because people like, okay, so I think Prime 3 is actually a really good example of this, right? So Prime 3 pulled back from 1 and 2 and tried to be Prime 3, like I love it. I actually like it more than 2 more to be honest. Because I like the gameplay of it, but it's definitely a call and response for the bro shooter stuff that was going on at the time.
It's a very like cinematic first person shooter action game, like a Call of Duty campaign, isn't it?
It feels, yeah, it honestly feels more like Halo than that, but yeah, it definitely.
Okay,
it
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
is.
I don't know why I didn't think of Halo, but
Yeah, it was like, and so for that, like, I don't really think that works for Metroid. I think like just a little smidgen of it is fine. Maybe like in an intro cutscene or like in one small event, but it's like consistent through the whole game where you're like, we were talking about rail shooters earlier. Prime 3 feels a lot like that. You're going through the sites and the locales, just blasting stuff with the Wiimote. And it's fun. Sin and Punishment is fun. Panzer Dragoon is fun. But it loses that element of exploration and like deep ambience that that I think 1 and 2 had. It's more particularly 1. But that's what I bring this up because you mentioned like getting a designer, a dev from Halo, and it makes me think that like Nintendo's pushing like, not that they would go full blockbuster, production with it, but it makes me think that they're kind of doing like a B blockbuster, which is even more scary because like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, that could be.
I think. Well, you mentioned the Nintendo perfectionism, and I think after where Prime 3 went, at least from like the first like hour or whatever that I played of it, um, there's a there's this idea that I think that Nintendo could totally have, where the 2D Metroid games are places where you show off cinematic stuff, you do the classic Metroid thing, but it's still about exploration at its core. It's still not necessarily linear. You're exploring, you're adapting, you're getting lost, you're finding new items, and then the Prime series then becomes first-person shooter, cinematic stuff. You're still getting lost at points, but it's decidedly more linear, almost like a Metroid 2 kind of thing, where
Yeah.
it's still open, but it's you're very much guided. And I could totally see Prime 4 kind of maybe being more open than Prime 3, but still incorporating these cinematic elements.
Yeah, and I would be fine with that. That's kind of what I would expect, because I don't expect Nintendo to ever do something nuanced. Like I honestly, like at this point in the game, like Nintendo has proven time and time again that like they are the reason for stifling creativity in a lot of their subcontracted developers. Even in their first party development teams, I feel like there's a lot of it's lost, a lot of it's kind of boomery, out of touch.
Unless it's like a new Zelda or Mario,
But even
it's not
then,
getting that love.
and even then, like Odyssey is great. It's honestly one of my favorite Mario games, but like it's not anything new or innovative. Like it's not pushing, it's not taking a chance or being interesting. I think like the last time you even saw that with like a Mario game was Sunshine, and even then that's like debatable. But
That's interesting. I've been in a completely different camp with those games.
where you think the opposite, like that they've been
Yeah.
taking chances.
Well, not necessarily chances,
MySpace.
but I think
Yeah, Nintendo's top 8 retro studios ain't even there. They shafted them out, unfortunately. That's the old head.
is that a MySpace?
That's a MySpace
joke?
reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm 21, chat. Sorry. What was I gonna say?
Mario's the creativity of Mario.
Well, I think it's interesting using Mario as kind of a barometer for that, because like I think Mario's problem is that they just try to do creative new things too frequently with 3D Mario stuff and not enough with 2D Mario stuff.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
then
That's
3D
fair.
Mario
Yeah.
stuff is like, throwing too much shit at you all the time, constantly, and it's so that nothing ever gets old, but they also never get a chance to like really refine any of those things.
Exactly.
Which is also why Super Mario Galaxy 2 is the best Mario game.
I was waiting for it. That's your Ubisoft sucks.
Yeah, it really is. It's that, and Super Metroid is the best 2D game ever made. But
hell yeah. No, that's a really good point. Actually, I think that's maybe I should rephrase my view to something actually reflecting those points. But
and then I think Zelda is kind of like the reverse of that, where it's kind of taking this approach, a new approach to something that's very much trodden ground, and just refining it to such like an unbelievable degree that it just kind of sets the bar for 5 years, and then a game from another developer comes out, does something better, and then Nintendo plays that game and they're like, oh, we can do that better. And that's what Zelda feels like to me.
So I'm bringing up this game specifically to talk about Prime 4 because I swear it has relevance. The biggest, like the microcosm of Nintendo's problems to me is Skyward Sword. Okay, you have this incredibly like innovative battle system, an interesting like not that it's, I guess ambitious is a better word, that you finally get to play with the sword. You know, you've been playing Zelda with your friends with sticks for years. Now you can finally use the sword.
Right.
And there's like an interesting approach to like building up the world, and you know, like a greater extent of lore tying things together. But then you look at the actual execution of that game, and it's like the longest, most arduous tutorial you've ever played. A bunch of shitty motion controls, a bunch of stuff that feels like subcontracted to LGN even at points. I'm being a little too harsh on Skyward Sword because I do really like, but like that's kind of like what Nintendo's thing is. It's like they hamstring themselves so much with like remembering that they make stuff for kids. If that makes sense.
That's why I feel like the games that they make that are kept in almost entirely or completely in-house or within a specific developer's like constraints, and then letting them have creative freedom, are always like end up being the best Nintendo games. Like, did you play Cadence of Hyrule?
A little bit. I'm really fucking bad at Crypt of the Necromancer. So
okay, I'm pretty much the same way. Like I'm not the best at those games. They're decently challenging for me, but I really think that that's like a good example of like Nintendo learning how to do things, and then something really, really stupid resetting all of that, right? Like that era, or that the era of like early Switch saw so many really good like Nintendo licensing agreements, like Mario and Rabbids. You had Star Fox being the only thing that made Starlink remotely interesting
because they were losing money. They finally sold out and sold their IPs to third, and you're still seeing that because that was like a beta test for it, and it actually did pretty well. And I think that's why you're seeing like stuff like giving Koei Tecmo more control of their Zelda IP and getting Hyrule Warriors that sold super well. And
Koei Tecmo even helped with Fire Emblem.
Yeah, and Monolith Soft working on Zelda, Mario Odyssey. Like, there's a lot of like cross stuff now. Nintendo is like the least independent that they've ever been, I think, in a lot of ways. And Six asked a really good question about like, are they still the old guard mentality, or are they trying to piggyback off of what is currently hip? And it's like, I feel like there's just a delay. Nintendo's stuff is always delayed. Like, their reactionary things are always too little too late, I feel. Or just, like, oddly too late. And that's what I was saying, like, they're, like, a little out of touch. And I'm worried that Prime 4 will do this.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that. I think that there's... it comes in waves where it's almost like a sine curve with Nintendo, where they're, like, ahead of their time, behind the times. Like, Splatoon being a role-based team shooter with 4 people... that's about objectives other than killing, coming out in 2015, right before things like Overwatch. is like
Yeah.
really, really prescient of like where a lot of popular multiplayer games would go. And obviously, you have stuff like Counter-Strike before that, but Counter-Strike is a very different thing
Yeah,
from
it's a
Overwatch.
totally No, Splatoon was a really that's a really good example of them like almost being like clairvoyant. Like you use the
You're
word
right.
prescient, and I think that's a perfect word to describe sort of what they do. Um,
But then the other side of that coin is
yeah,
Splatoon 2 launching with Salmon Run, which is a horde mode that's 10 years too late.
yeah, yeah. That's and dude, we tried to play local Switch for that, and it was a nightmare. People kept
Oh,
desyncing. Then the thing was that Nintendo tells you to turn off your all Bluetooth devices, but then it makes you use Bluetooth devices for their fucking stupid chat pro. It's just like a
yeah.
brainless, dumb. It's so frustrating. It's maybe it's tangential to talk about this stuff because I don't really think it'll ever apply to Metroid in a way because I don't see Metroid as like a series of innovation. I see it as sort of like
I mean, it innovates internally. It's never going to be
exactly.
innovation that comes from outside. It's always going to
It's
be,
not
well, that's
disruptive
not true, but
innovation. It's never
yeah, it's
disruptive innovation. It's always like iterative,
mhm,
basically.
yeah. And
Um, yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No. You go. You go.
I, was- I
I hit a wall.
yeah, no, I did too. Jeez. Okay. What was I going to say? Yeah, no, I think like another example of that is like you look at Wii Sports and then you look at Wii Sports Club. Like that idea is so big. You have Wii Sports, you have Wii Fit, you have Wii Sports Resort. You have all these ideas of well-made, fun, uh, uh, easy to play, easy to learn mini games that have everything you could ask for in a collection of somewhat involved mini games, right? And then they run out of ideas because the Wii U isn't selling enough, and they ditch the idea, so then they just remake the fucking thing for no reason.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
5 years into the Wii
yeah,
U's life cycle for no reason, and it just
yeah,
shows up on your Wii U home screen
yeah.
without any warning.
Invasively, like Bonsai
Yeah.
Buddy. I'm sorry, Charlie. I keep throwing these dated references at you, and
Okay? So what's Bonsai Buddy?
oh, okay. So it was a purple talking monkey that came out in like the very early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was software you had to manually download, and its thing was that it talked to you. You
Mm-hmm.
could ask it questions, type in
Oh, so it was like
questions.
a bonsai that you had to take care of it and stuff.
No, it was a purple monkey.
No, but like you had to take care of it like a
Yeah,
bonsai, where you
like
had to
a yeah,
like
like a bond. Yeah,
yeah.
trim its gorilla pubes.
Okay.
But um,
Oh,
but no, you could ask it questions and it would basically Google stuff for you. But it was
okay.
also loaded with malware. It was literally a Trojan. You'd fucking nuke the family PC with Bonsai Buddy,
Uh-huh.
dude.
Okay. Okay.
And it would like freeze your computer, like destroy your VRAM, like oh man, it's like it was the most insidious fucking purple bunny like
It was the
it,
X parasite.
or it was the X parasite. I said bunny. Monkey. Oh man. What yeah, exactly. That was a really good way of tying this back into Metroid. Oh man. But yeah, no, I don't really know how stoked I want to be and what my expectations are going to be for Dread and Prime
Mm.
4. I feel like they're throwing Dread at us first to give us like almost like lull us into a false sense of security. Like, hey, we heard that you guys like 2D games, so here's your 2D game. Now like Splatoon 4, which is just Metroid Prime 4. It's just like retooled to be a Splatoon game or like that that's not it's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid they're going to do something like that where it's like Metroid Prime 4 is like you're talking around and doing fetch quests to NPCs that have like names like Bob or like Spaceship Jim, and then you have to kill like two Metroids in a cave and it just beats itself. Like I'm worried that that's what Prime 4 is gonna be, man. I don't know.
So I think you should withhold some of that cynicism until after you finish Samus Returns,
Hmm.
because I think Samus Returns is riddled with problems that come from being a remake of Metroid 2, which is a super limited game.
Hmm.
And I think looking at the engine and gameplay level changes that they made to the formula, and looking at things that they added as as kind of like a tone setting, I guess a tone piece for what Dread should be,
Hmm.
rather than maybe the overall Metroidy elements of it, because the original was so linear already.
Yeah. Interesting. So you need to play another Metroid 2 remake.
I do. I like have it as Chance would have it. I have a tab for AM2R literally open right now, that I've had open on my desktop for like weeks, maybe actually months at this point, because it was
It's
when I
very
moved in.
plug and play. You just
Hmm.
you plug in a gamepad, it detects it. It's super
Oh,
pain
awesome.
free.
Okay.
However, I had an issue with the DualSense. It wouldn't register my pad, so I had to use a stick, which brought with it a myriad of problems.
Like a fight stick.
No, my just the analog stick.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'll probably just use an Xbox controller because it
Yeah,
just works with Windows the best,
yeah, that's fair.
and that
But
D-pad's so good.
the DualSense D-pad's okay. It hurts me for
Oh,
fighting games.
I hate the DualSense D-pad so much. I'm not gonna get into console war shit, but like I cannot fucking stand
Yo, let me tell
the
you about a
that.
D-pad, baby. This is a D-pad.
Oh no, listen, Joey. The best D-pad out there is the new Xbox One. I can't find my fucking controller right now, but the new Xbox D-pad is perfect.
I
It's
haven't
like the
tried the
weird.
series
Oh,
controller
let
yet.
me see if I can fish it out of my backpack, because it should be behind my green screen.
Oh, you're not literally in front of Metroid? Is that what's going on? That's crazy. Metroid with the nub. Huh. Dude, yeah. This is the whole game with the nub. I don't know if I want to try that. I would do it just for the. You know what? I played up to
The nub.
the second boss of Bloodborne with my phone, so I have done worse.
This is what I'm talking about,
So it's
Chad.
like the Steam controller.
Kind of, yeah. It's really clicky, super responsive. It's also really good for fighting games. Like I was playing, what was I playing last night? I was playing King of Fighters 13 and Injustice 2 recently with that D-pad, and it is just perfect for
You
that
named
stuff.
one fighter and one party game.
Which is which?
Injustice is the party game. It's
Okay,
like
well, I
playing
mean,
Smash with items on.
Injustice 2, it's good. It's good. It's definitely not my favorite, but it's fun.
I actually didn't die, by the way, Six. I smoked Father Gascoigne with, which it should be Gascoigne, but they don't pronounce it right because they're stupid. But yeah,
Wait, how is it?
Gascoigne. Gascoigne. But I don't think
Actually, I
it's
mean,
supposed to be
I guess it
Italian.
depends on what. Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's French, it's Gascoigne or Gascoigne
Oh yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, I guess
or Gascoigne.
Bloodborne is French inspired, but it still
Really?
fucks
I thought
me
it
up.
was British.
It's all Europe.
Oh, okay.
I
Because
made
like
that up.
everyone talks like they're like in a Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah, I think that's just generic. Well, FromSoft is just like generic, like Western
Yeah.
influence. But yeah, that makes sense. With a Nokia 26, no, with an Atari 2600. That's how I play Bloodborne. But yeah,
How do you
sorry,
feel?
we went off
Oh,
a little bit of this. Yeah, you should play Metroid 2 Remake because I think a lot of what we're talking about, what we want Metroid to be, sounds a lot like this game in theory.
hmm,
Because I mean, it takes the very like open sort of limited template of Metroid 2
hmm,
and definitely like makes it chunkier. Uh it takes but it doesn't really take liberties with it.
hmm,
You know, I mean like the flow of the game is still the same. The areas are the same. The map parts that are there that match the original are the same. But like there's just more shit. if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So
I also, I think because Dread is a game that started design after we got Zero Mission and Fusion, but just was never made because of hardware constraints.
it was
I
made for
think
the D, or was presented for the DS, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, yeah. So it was originally designed with the DS in mind, but they just like couldn't really do it, which is another thing that has me kind of faithful and optimistic about that game. Is like a team that made Fusion, which to me is like a very, very good Metroid game that takes things in a different, innovative direction for all of its flaws and linearity, but uses those things really well, those affordances and limitations really well. That's what really gives me faith
Mm-hmm.
for Metroid Dread,
From it, yeah,
and also the fact that for all intents and purposes, like I said, Samus Returns was more of a remake proving ground for Mercury's theme than anything else to me. But
for sure. Yeah, I will definitely report back when I finish it. And Nintendo will never embrace the homebrew
no,
community.
nope.
Why do that when they could send cease and desist?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as they are making consoles, unless they go the way of Sega, which will never ever happen. I just there's no way in hell it happens at this point.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, no.
it will they
I don't see that happening.
Yeah. I mean, they're just so much more. They're just too successful. They're like what, the richest company in Japan or something like that, or like top five. It's something ridiculous. And Sega is not that, and I don't think they ever were even at their
Yeah,
peak.
honestly, like I went through a period of time where I was like, I just want Nintendo to be a developer, and then I realized like
Mm.
how poor that would go if they were second or third party developers. Like it'd be even
Mhm.
worse. You know, like,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's no. I mean, in a way, I don't know, man. That's such a tricky subject because it's funny because another Metroid 2 remake is seen as like basically the definitive Metroid 2 experience by a lot of fans, like even more so than Samus Returns. And
Mhm.
I see why that is the case. You know, like I don't know if I agree because I haven't played through all of Samus Returns yet, but I can see why like intellectually people think that. And I think
Mm.
that Nintendo, that is a legitimate threat to them,
Yeah,
especially with a smaller series like this.
for sure. I
So,
also I also think it's I think a lot of those fans might, and I haven't played this, so this isn't me passing judgment. This is just based on what I know and have seen of AM2R, which admittedly is like a decent amount, but I think a lot of that might also just be like fans wanting more Super Metroid,
yes. Yeah, and
because
yes.
it seems like it's basically just Metroid 2 in a Super Metroid engine.
Uh, so yeah and no. I think it actually plays way more like Zero Mission than anything else, to
Okay.
be honest. Even like the like chunkiness of Zero Mission translates into it. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I think with like fans, like big like long term fans especially, I feel like people say that they want the same thing, but they don't actually want that.
Well,
You
that
know.
I was talking about this in light of the Insomniac Wolverine reveal, because
Which, by the way, my arms are hairier.
yeah, you could do the mocap for him.
I'm also closer to Logan's
Yeah,
height.
yeah. Wolverine is a short king.
5'2", short K, 5'2". I'm not Canadian though, so that's unfortunate.
That's true. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure you could. I'm sure you could wing it there though.
There are Assyrians
Uh,
in Canada. It's possible.
what was I gonna say? But yeah, no. Like I think it's like creative people, whether it's a musician, a filmmaker, a musical artist, what have you. Their job isn't necessarily to give us what we want; it's to give us what we don't know we want, which
Yeah.
is which is like my approach to a lot of the things. It's like, okay, the Hitman developer making a James Bond game is perfect, but it might not necessarily push those developers to new heights. It will just allow them to iterate and respond to like other Hitman stuff. Uh, and so I think that's kind of like how a lot of the time I see like discourse around remakes in general, but
Yes.
especially things that have so much nostalgia attached to them. I always look at it like from that lens, just because a lot of the games that get remade that people have a lot of fervor about are games that I didn't really grow up with.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm critiquing the games as the remakes as games as well as remakes, instead of,
More
or
so than the other
primarily
way around.
games then remakes rather than
Yes.
primarily remakes then games.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so I think it's an ideal way to approach discourse about this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like I think even as a newcomer, playing something that is a remake, I feel like it's a harder sell because
mm,
you always have to deal like your project's entire impetus is why does this exist when the original exists?
mhm.
At least to me, creatively, that's how I feel like a lot of people approach it. And it's at the same time, it's funky because it's like the a remake doesn't destroy the original. Like even if Final Fantasy VII remake was like everything that happened in Final Fantasy VII wasn't real, that was Cloud's dream. You know, like let's say that's not good. Maybe it might. I don't know. Nomura is
That would
weird.
be. I mean, they do say that in the theme for that game. They literally say, "Was it all a dream? Will I ever know?"
Yeah.
Oh my
But
god.
like even if they like hard retconned it, like the original
Mm,
still exists. Like you can still
right.
enjoy the original just as much as you did when you played it.
Mhm.
Future installments or remakes shouldn't affect your don't ruin the original. But
Unless you're a Star Wars fan.
unless yeah. Well, okay, to be fair, that's George Lucas's fault. That's actually one situation where I would say
Oh,
yeah,
I was
that's
in
true.
with a special edition. Sorry, I was thinking about sequels to the Star Wars
Oh, okay,
movies
you
and
know, because like
prequels where
this,
people are like, "Oh, this ruins everything."
because it's like you literally like you have to like illegally download the like original theatrical cuts. Like
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, or like watch a fan edit of that. Like it's just, but 99.9% of the time that's not really true, right? So it's like, it's tough. It's tough to say. I think that that's a good subject about Zero Mission though, because Zero Mission streamlined a lot of Metroid One, and especially like having just played through that game, it streamlined a lot of it, but didn't. And I will say that it definitely trimmed some of like the atmosphere and sense of dread and just horror that the original had.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, that happens both aesthetically and gameplay wise because like the platforming feels easier. There's like everything is just a little bit more streamlined. You know, like the colors are brighter. But at the same time, like making it an actual gameplay experience versus one, I think it just did nothing but add
Hmm.
stuff,
Yeah.
and that's good. You know, I
Hmm.
feel like, and you said it was like one of the best remakes of all time. Um, it's good. It's I don't know if I
Yeah.
would say it's that good, but it is very good for sure.
I think. Ooh, that's a good question from 6 2/3. Um,
If Dread is big, will Nintendo cash in? I think that Nintendo will cash in Metroid Prime 4 if Dread is big.
yeah.
That's
I think.
why I think it's very obvious that we got that game first. It
Yeah. I
was
think. I
very
mean,
intentional.
I think they're pushing really hard. I mean, if you follow Nintendo America on Twitter, like I do, like I have notifications on for them just because, like, uh, I really give a shit about Nintendo. Like, I really, really am tuned into that discourse and that discussion. Um, but it's like every day they tweet about Metroid Dread, like every day almost. Um, and on some level, I think part of that is because they understand what a big deal that is, just as a concept. Because there's so few Nintendo games that go that deep into development hell or become
Yeah.
such ethereal pieces of vaporware, then
It's the
come
Duke
back like
Nukem
this.
Forever of Nintendo.
No, basically. And like, so I think part of it is that it's that fan service, but I also think part of it is marketing. Like, I really do think that this is their big like holiday title, and that's, I mean, aside from Pokemon, but
Yeah.
that's not a core Nintendo game technically. But I think, um, I think that's really what they're testing. I think this is them trying to justify uh, spending all the money that they are currently spending on developing Prime 4. Like I think Prime 4 is going to be a very expensive game for Nintendo. I mean, it already has been. I mean, they were working on it for 2 or 3 years,
It's
completely canned it,
probably one of the
and started
final
over.
big Switch games.
Yeah, I would assume. Unless some crazy shit happens and they're like, "Oh, we're going to make the Switch forever." Uh which I wouldn't be surprised by, honestly, with how well it's selling. But I I think that it's priming an audience that hasn't had like people like me. Like I mean, I've been a Metroid fan for years, but like people my age do not know what Metroid is outside of Smash at all,
Hmm.
unless like they saw a TV commercial in a GameStop for other M and were like, wow, that's a really different thing from the other games I'm playing on my family's Wii at the time. But people my age just don't know what Metroid is. Uh,
You
and
were nuking the family Wii with Bonsai Buddy. That's what was happening.
and so like yeah, I think this is them. Like every time I get on Twitter and see someone tweeting about Metroid Dread, if someone's like, oh, this is going to be my first Metroid game, which seems
Hmm.
to me like it's going to sell well, especially for a
Yeah.
2D Metroid game coming out in October. Like I have immense faith in this game's success.
What is that? There's a term for it. There has to be a term for it when something is kind of like just kind of like left to sit there while like companies wait for the most opportune time to capitalize on it. Like you see this happen really big with Star Trek, even Star Wars, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
once they like re-released Star Wars in theaters in the '90s, that's what like
Yeah,
brought hype to start Episode 1.
yeah,
So like, but yeah, I mean, you see that happening a lot, and I think Nintendo, it's free for Nintendo. I
yeah.
will say that Nintendo definitely thinks that is definitely not putting AAA resources into Metroid Dread, or maybe not even Prime 4, but they're expecting it to be a B item that sells better than most of their other B items. For example,
Mm,
like they're giving it the same kind of a, maybe not attention, but I feel like their attitude of Metroid Dread as as a product is like has the same maybe production like level or product level as ARMS, but it will sell way more than ARMS just by
mm,
default or by virtue of being Metroid.
interesting.
Because when they put those pre-orders up, they sold out like instantly, and
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
first sign of like push marketing. Once
yeah. I
something
mean,
sells out, it's just push. You
yeah.
double down.
I mean, like that it was. I think it was the number one pre-ordered game on Amazon after E3, which
Wow.
is
Yeah.
shocking to me because like there was a Halo game at E3. There was, or no,
Yeah.
there wasn't a Call of Duty game at E3. There was a Marvel related game at E3,
Hmm.
which is like the biggest property, one of the biggest properties in the world right now. There was a Pokemon game
Gran
that showed up at
Turismo
E3.
as well.
Is Gran Turismo really that big?
Dude, Gran Turismo 1 through 3 sold a combination of 23 million units.
Hmm.
Gran Turismo 5 was like, I think it was 15 million,
Hmm.
17 million, something like that. It's
Gran Turismo wasn't
insane.
at E3 though.
Oh, I thought that they announced it. I might be
No, they announced
conflating
that
that. Yeah.
last year at the PlayStation, whatever the fuck thing that they like to call it, because for some reason State of Play isn't good enough.
Yeah, they change it every time.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
really stupid. It's
you know
really
what?
annoying.
Let's bring up Jamie here to Jamie. Can we get a sales numbers? If I'm not mistaken, Metro, I don't think it's ever sold more than like 3 or 4. Yep, I was
No,
right.
isn't Metroid Prime the best selling
Yes,
game in the franchise with
Metroid
like
Prime
1.8 million?
2.8.
Oh,
Metroid
okay.
1 is 2.7. Metroid. Oh wow. Game Boy Metroid 2 1.7. That's actually a lot.
Mhm.
Fusion with 1.6 million. So they've never broken 2 million.
And they absolutely will. Like there's no universe in which a first party Nintendo game
Yes,
uh,
especially on
on the
Switch.
Switch does not break like 3 or 4 million. I mean,
Yeah.
like what did Arms sell? I think Arms is sitting at like 4 or 5
4.
now.
Yeah, it's like yeah. The last time I checked, it was 4. I think.
Let me check
Uh,
this. Arms 2.38.
Oh,
So
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, we both wrong.
it's not quite under that prime number, but I mean Ring Fit Adventure. Well, Ring Fit Adventure is a weird case, but like that game, I think last I heard that game broke 10 million, which
Wow.
is shocking.
10 million? What?
Yeah.
I don't even think they made that many. But yeah,
Oh yeah, no, you see them all over the place now.
Prime 3 sold 1.4 and Other M sold 1.3. But Other M, this is also probably including the Wii U Virtual Console sales.
Mm-hmm. So Nintendo doesn't report eShop sales, like publicly, unless it's like included in their own personal metrics. So I don't think that is part of the eShop thing.
I see.
But also Ring Fit's at as of last month, Ring Fit is at 11.26 million
That's
units.
Insane. That's
oh my god,
fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? Instagram and influencers had a big influence on that game, and it's just like it has the same kind of Animal Crossing. Yeah, it's like, but I mean, either way, those numbers are not like incredibly huge, especially for Metroid. Like for a series that is like, you know, I think of like original Smash Brothers series, right? Like for a series that being not like integrated into Nintendo's
Legacy
lexicon.
Nintendo.
Yeah. Mother does not count because Mother is an exception. Mother is a Kino exception.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're actually kind of like running up on time here. Any other subjects that you want to bring up for the next like couple minutes before we close it out?
6 2/3 did, you know, we answered half of their question, but they did mention the Super Metroid remake, and I'm curious what you think about a remake of that game.
I don't think it needs. I think it's no.
I'm in the same place. Like the only things I could see it needing a remake for are like small changes that eliminate like maybe bad pacing moments. But even that game is just so much a Swiss watch that I don't really think that changing it would be for its benefit in any way. And again, like it's their job to prove me wrong as people who are more creative than myself.
You know what? If you're gonna take my shit and sell it back to me, at least do something like unabashed about it.
Right.
If Nintendo, actually, this is a good point. Maybe this is a thing. If Nintendo did like a Super Metroid randomizer, like a legit official one, that would be sick, actually. And thank you for the follow. Hoss312 is back here. I don't know if that's an actual account or not. Oh, you know what? I think that's a bot. So thank you for being a bot. Yeah, I don't want any remake of... I mean, Metroid doesn't have that many games, but that being said, I would love a port of the Prime trilogy. And I honestly think that's in the cards.
Yeah.
I think that's in the cards, man, because...
I mean, even after that video came out of that guy saying, like, oh, it's really hard to do, like, I agree. Like, there's no reason that game that has been ported to other things before, that's been around since 2000, like, what, 10, 9? That they don't have that ready for a new 3D console.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but one of the lead developers on the Prime series, I don't think he works there anymore. He was talking about on a Facebook post about how it would actually be a huge investment for them to port even the Prime trilogy to Switch, to use the Switch controls, especially the motion controls. Because of just the way the game was coded, it was like a little bit like makeshift, and so like you'd have to like almost reverse engineer a lot of the stuff or something. If you Google it, you could see his.
No, I know. I remember when that happened. And I think like you were tweeting about this earlier today. I like the motion controls in Metroid Prime. Honestly, I think they're better than like what a normal controller would be.
I haven't played it, so I can't attest to it.
You've never played it with motion controls?
No, I mean I played 3 with motion controls, but not 1 and 2.
Well, 3 is different because and I don't know anything about Skyward Sword really, but 3 to me is very similar to Skyward Sword with the ways that they use the Wii remote. Like my understanding is that there are like things
Yeah.
like in 3 where you do like things on a keypad, or you like pull keys out of a door or something like that, and there's stuff like that in Skyward Sword. But in 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, there's nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I think I can see it, and this is just predictions, so we'll follow up on these later. But I feel like there's probably some of the platforming probably going to make me mad. Stuff like that. Just
Like with the motion controls, or
yeah, because
the platforming was never a problem for me.
we shall see. We shall see. But I just think it's like, I mean, I know it's on the Wii. Okay, I know. But to not give you the option to have regular controls kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. But yeah, no, I would really, really like that trilogy to come to Switch, because I think if you really want... I mean, okay, granted, we just established that Metroid has never sold over 3 million copies of anything. But like... It would definitely bolster sales. I think it would push Nintendo into the more preservation stuff that they really need to embrace. Because Nintendo loves money.
Yeah.
And that's a really good... I feel like that's an untapped resource right now. Is like a hard stop game preservation system. Or just like porting all... Like inclusive... Like all-inclusively porting things. Which I almost want to say that they're doing, but I think that's not really true. I think it's just they're trying to really beef up those Switch sales while they can.
Yep.
While they know that they can. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I would like some GBA ports to happen on the Switch Online service, so to get Fusion and Zero Mission there.
That's really like the rumor that I've been hearing for a while now. I feel like
I heard GB and GBC though. That's what I was.
those are more recent rumors, I think. Interestingly enough, like the GBA stuff has been things that I've heard, like probably since like this time last year, honestly. But then like original Game Boy and GBC have been like were like more recent like data mine level things.
I see. Yeah.
But
Okay.
my understanding is that, and I've heard a number of like, leakers are such weird like sources to go to or to cite, but the leakers that I've seen like be consistently accurate on multiple levels with Nintendo stuff have basically all alleged that there's some kind of subscription service from Nintendo coming outside of Nintendo Switch Online, and it will be somewhat big. It will feature some level of cloud interactivity, and it will kind of blow open some of their legacy libraries.
Yes.
In like a pretty significant way. That's what I've heard.
This is kind of what I wanted. This is sort of what I want. I want to do an episode sometime soon about like game preservation and the way to like I feel like sort of people can market that, and all the economics that go into it. So here's the thing, 6, because 6 says Nintendo are kind of doofy by not releasing their older Metroids, playing up to Dread and Prime 4. So again, like, yeah, in between that, yeah. But so like we were saying before, if porting the Prime trilogy is something that does take a year, and like that means millions of dollars, I don't know if that's an economically viable thing for Nintendo to do, because I think companies are finding that ports or remasters are kind of gambles sometimes, and that's why they it's in Ouroboros here, because a lot of times, like Sega's a really good example. The Sonic Colors remaster that just came out, they subcontracted that out to a company who was like haphazard at best. Probably really good developers. It's probably just run terribly. I'm sure it's like not an issue of creativity or talent, basically. Um, but like, you know, that kind of stuff ends up hurting the reputation of a game, and it ends up feeling like that price and that time investment was not worth it. And especially games that actually need that you can't just straight port, would be a thing, because I think like it would be in Nintendo's best interest to port the Prime trilogy for Wii, and it would actually be the easiest to port apparently.
Yeah.
Because apart from like building an emulator for GameCube and going through, so the main point I'm trying to make is that it's actually expensive to port stuff or remaster it and then sell it and market
drag and
it.
drop.
Yeah, I mean, it is technically you can just drag and drop it, but companies don't do that. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think a big part of this discussion that makes the Prime trilogy in particular kind of an exemption from a lot of the things that often bog down remakes, remasters, and re-releases is that the Prime trilogy is, by all accounts, probably the best critically received trilogy in gaming. There's an argument for like Mass Effect or something in there, or like there's a very small number of games that can even like stand up to like that thing. Like if you look at Metacritic, for example, the Metroid Prime trilogy is the highest rated trilogy, I would assume, or I think. I'm like reasonably sure. I heard someone mention this the other day, and I'm pretty sure that's true. But I say that because people care about that shit so much more now than they did in 2007. Mm-hmm. Games that review well, to me at least, feed into Metacritic discussion, which then feeds into online discussion in a much bigger way. I mean, like 13 Sentinels, which is which is a very niche game, got a super positive critical reception, and all of a sudden it became like one of these games that everyone was talking about, seemingly. And sure, it's not going to be on everyone was talking about it like everyone talks about a Call of Duty, but it's going to be in that it's going to get a boost from that. And I think that critical reception and that standing with longtime fans and people who pay attention to that, because there are so many people who do that now, will impact sales, will make Nintendo want to pay attention to that compared to something like Sonic Colors, which is maybe one of the better 3D Sonic games, but it still, I don't think, was ever beloved outside of Sonic fans liking it, and then people saying, oh, this is good for a 3D Sonic game.
So Metacritic scores it's a dubious point of interest, marketability wise.
Yeah.
A company like Nintendo doesn't give a fuck, to be honest.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because let's be real, Nintendo is Nintendo. Their reputation always precedes them with coverage. So like word of mouth is always going to be like in their corner. Yeah. And do I think Nintendo pays journalists to write positive reviews? No. Do I? Actually? Yeah. I mean, in a way, directly, no. No. Nintendo's not like, hey, Charlie, I'm going to give you $30,000 or $3,000 to write this glowing review. But it's more so, we're going to give you proper incentive that a lot of other companies don't give you. And also, like, you want to build, there's politics involved. There's always politics involved with that. So Nintendo doesn't care about Metacritic, basically.
I'm not saying Nintendo does, but
but companies,
people on Twitter do. People who talk to their friends at school about, like, this game should be remastered, whatever.
Right, but the thing is that like how I feel like game companies are like, how much of that does it actually influence sales compared to, you know, just pouring more money into marketing or releasing a game at a certain time? Or
the Metacritic thing, it was more of an example of like a broader point. to me rather than a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like when a game comes out nowadays and it reviews really positively, usually more people will pay attention to that score.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, discussion about games on the internet
Right.
wasn't really as much of a thing. But now the biggest YouTube channels are about video games. It's not just press. It's influencers too. It's people on TikTok making a video about it and then getting an obscene amount of views because that platform is so easy to abuse. People posting things in mainstream media even. And that to me is where like something like Metroid is going to shine
Yeah.
because it has this deep-seated connection to hardcore Nintendo fans.
Yes.
It has the critical reception that very few games and very few franchises that are that beloved do. And it has the accessibility of being on a console that's ubiquitous for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I mean, if you want to Switch, you might not be able to get one right now, but you know someone who has one.
Yeah. I think that the bottom line is that they're poised for success.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm trying to say. And so, like, I think we're in a day and age where discussion on the internet kind of dictates comebacks for
Star Tropics.
Yeah. Wait. No, not Star Tropics. Comebacks for like for things that
Acclaimed
people talk
IPs.
about a lot. Yeah. I mean, because more people talk about Metroid than have played it. It's the Persona and Mother effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you see all those memes from like Hard Drive saying like, "Oh, hardcore Earthbound fan finally plays Earthbound game." Like it writes it writes itself, but.
That being said, I do want Star Tropics remade. But no, that's a good point, and I think that's a good sort of optimistic note to end on. I didn't mean to get too granular about Metacritic stuff. I just think it's an interesting topic. I don't know why I thought it was pertinent to discuss that so deeply on this episode. But hey, man, that's why it's a live stream discussion based episode, right? But yeah, I think we should probably wrap it up here just because we're getting a little bit long. I will say that I do kind of maybe want to revisit some of these topics in the future with you, Charlie, if you are up to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Once I finish my replay would be an ample opportunity to do that. Maybe a little bit before Dread comes out. We shall
or
see.
After Dread, honestly.
Or after Dread.
I think that will be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's good, bad, or very predictably middling.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to be in the middle. I expect it to be either really good or really bad.
So last thought. Wait, what is your guesstimate for where you think, just for, I guess, brevity, what number do you think you're going to end up giving? What number rating do you think you're going to end up giving Dread?
I expect, let's see, based on the idea that, to me, as someone whose first Metroid game, or first full playthrough for a Metroid game was Samus Returns, and I like that as a jumping on point. And I think it was a good jumping on point for its linearity, for its action, all that stuff. I think that was a 9, and for what it was and for what it was doing is kind of a return in some ways, no pun intended. I expect Dread to me to be in the 9s range. I think that it's mostly because Samus Returns showed a lot of promise showed a lot of mechanical promise, but not necessarily gameplay prowess. Whereas Dread is something that's been in the works for so long, back when we had really interesting, smart, well-designed Metroid stuff, and it's being made with really, really solid mechanics, and it just looks good, which is something that Samus Returns didn't always do. I think that it will be like a solid 9 at the very least for me.
Ooh. I'm guessing 7, low 7. Maybe a high 6, maybe maybe higher. Maybe it'll really click with me. That's just my guess personally. I don't know. I'm not going to go into the game expecting that, but just sometimes you intuit these things. I'm not always right about that ever. I'm never right about that, but it's still a fun game to play. Cool. Charlie, do you want to plug your stuff? Where can we find you on the internet? If we talk to Bonsai Buddy, where could he tell us where you are located?
Bonsai Buddy would point you in the direction, firstly, of twitter.com, where you can find me at CHAS_MKE. That's Chaz Milwaukee. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok at CHAS_MKE. Mostly on Twitter, occasionally on Twitch, rarely on TikTok. But I also have a podcast called Comfort Food, and you can find that on Twitter at comfort_food_pod. And that's kind of a podcast where I talk to people about games, movies, TV, albums that they have a cherished memory with, or that they just really hold dear to their hearts, and kind of talk to them about their feelings and critical thoughts on it. And then you can also find my written work over at Android Central. Right now I'm doing a lot of VR-specific coverage for them, but I have a couple other features and reviews and stuff that I'm sure will come out between now and the time that this releases that you should also check out. So yeah, check me out on Android Central. I think that's everything that I do right now.
I have a mini plug for that. I was actually on one of the episodes that Charlie did for Comfort Food talking about Mega Man X.
Yes, I think that was the last episode that I put. No, that's not true. The last episode I put out was Metroid Fusion, actually. So appropriate. Yeah. So
you know what? I haven't listened to that yet. I'm going to do that.
Oh, really?
Actually,
okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right before I play it, so it'll color my impression. But yeah, thanks again, Charlie. Thanks everyone in chat for hanging out. And again, my honorary award for this is to 6 2/3 for being so active. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, and take care. SAX Bikini.